In any emergency, there are actions you take first. If someone collapses from a heart attack, you start chest compressions to keep the brain oxygenated until help arrives with a defibrillator. You stop bleeding before you worry about broken bones, but as I sat on my patio, I was stumped, unsure of what to do. This was uncharted territory for me. The certified critical care nurse, I had always trusted my ability to read the signs of an impending crisis. I could spot the subtle symptoms of a patient's decline long before it became apparent, but I never saw the warning signs in my own marriage. After nearly 18 years, I realized my marriage was beyond saving. I had made up my mind. I wasn't going to try to fix it. I was ready to let go, but I wanted the process to be as painful for Bonnie as possible. However, after some second thoughts, I revised my approach. I didn't want the kids to suffer from this mess, so I decided to go after Bonnie and her lover without involving them. I took another sip of beer and glanced over my backyard. The smooth lawn stretching to the bayou was just a few oak and pecan trees away. The house was large, 4 bedrooms, 3 baths, and had all the modern amenities. It wasn't something I could have afforded on my nurse's salary. It was a gift from my father and grandfather when I got engaged to Bonnie. Our family land, passed down through generations, had been used to build the house, which my father's construction company, Fontenot and Sons, had put together. I never cared much about money. I wanted enough to care for my family and to indulge in some hobbies. I had a boat for fishing and camping trips, a truck to haul it, and the occasional rifle or Colt. Family was my priority, and now it felt like everything was falling apart. Across the yard, I saw Susan, my sister, walk out her back door. Her house mirrored mine, down to the dock we shared. I raised my hand and she headed over. We needed to talk. "Starting early today, Rob? It's only 2 o'clock, she said, noticing the beer I was holding. "A whole cooler? I'm off for the rest of the week and feeling like it," I replied. "I don't want to waste time running back and forth to the house for another beer." I offered her one, and she sat down, cracking it open. "All right, what's going on? You had me freaking out when you asked me to come home and said I couldn't tell anyone first," Susan said. "You said no one was hurt or dead, but you don't seem too concerned. I know you didn't call me just for a drinking buddy." I cut to the chase. "Bonnie's been cheating on me. I found out a couple hours ago from an email." I tried to sound casual, but my voice cracked. "Are you sure? I mean, that's a pretty cruel joke, right?" Susan asked, stunned. I nodded and told her the email had a video attached, no doubt about it. "Who sent it?" she asked. "I don't know. It said, 'Your wife is cheating. Here's proof. More to come.' Signed, Pissed Off 999. Never heard of them." Susan sat quietly for a moment, processing, before she exploded. "That cheating witch," she fumed. "How could she? Doesn't she know you'd liquidate both her and the guy she's with? I'll rip her hair out. How do you even find time to cheat when you're home so much? She's never even shown interest in other men." Then her face went pale as she put the pieces together. "Wait, she's sleeping with Rich? My husband? They're cheating on us with each other?" Her face turned beet red and tears welled up. "I wanted to break it to you gently," I said, pulling her into a hug. "I've had a few hours to think about it. Enough to not grab my guns and go off the deep end." She wiped her eyes and quickly regained composure, her anger burning hotter. "All right. So what do we do now? Wait for them to get home and kick their asses?" "No, we get smart," I replied. "We act like we don't know anything. Tonight, we greet them like we did yesterday, with a kiss." Susan frowned, skeptical. "What? You want us to act normal?" "Yes," I insisted. "We need a plan. We'll talk to a lawyer tomorrow. The good thing is we haven't been exposed to any STDs. Unless you've been up to something too," I added, trying to lighten the mood. Susan shot me the finger. "Hell no! I haven't even thought about it, not seriously anyway. Maybe I joke about a TV star here and there, but no way." She drained her beer and tossed the can in the trash. I handed her a fresh one. "Just for the record, Rich is not getting any from me. I just got my period, so he's out of luck until we deal with this. And we can't tell the kids yet," I warned. "Not until we figure things out." Susan asked where they were. "I sent them to Mom and Dad's this morning. They left when I came out here. No questions, just piled into Jason's car and headed out. We both had 5 kids between us. The oldest, Jason, was 17. Susan's oldest, Rob, was a few months younger. Then there were the twins, Dave and Cindy, who were 16, along with my daughter, Deidre. 5 kids in 2 years made our house chaotic, but full of life. Rich had always been a good father and uncle. He'd helped the kids with school while I did most of the fun outdoor stuff. I wasn't into sports, but I took them camping, fishing, and hunting. We started with backyard trips and eventually made our way into the swamps. Rich would drive one boat, and I'd take the kids in the other. The fishing trips got crowded as they grew older, so we'd cut down on supplies, leaving the kids to fend for themselves. They learned teamwork, and I was proud of them. They were tough, resourceful, and understood the value of family. But now that same family was falling apart, and I had to figure out how to bring it all down without losing everything. 3 weeks ago, I arranged my work schedule to take 6 consecutive days off. I spent the time with the kids at Pawpaw's old fishing camp, driving one boat with the girls and letting the boys take turns in the other. We fished, caught crabs, and enjoyed being together as a family. It felt like everything was in place, but little did I know, Bonnie and Rich had different priorities. The thought of telling the kids about their affair broke my heart. Family meant everything to me, and the idea of tearing that apart was unbearable. I spoke to Susan, telling her, "We can't hide this forever." "I agree," she replied, "but we don't have to tell them just yet. I'll make sure nothing seems off." "There's no way I can forgive infidelity," I said, the pain cutting through me. "Bonnie's excuses won't change anything. I need to figure out how to move on without losing everything. I can't let her take the kids, and I can't let my anger lead me to do something reckless." Susan agreed. "I get it. The next step is to make sure she doesn't walk away with everything. I'll do whatever I can to make sure she doesn't get a penny more than she's entitled to." I nodded, knowing that Bonnie might be entitled to more, but Susan had a plan. "Our homes are safe," she said, a sly smile forming. "Pawpaw made sure they're protected. Bonnie and Rich can't touch them. She might try for the house or some of the possessions, but she has no claim on the property." Susan then reminded me of the prenup Bonnie and I had signed. "Dad insisted on it," she said. "I didn't understand it then, but now it might actually work in your favor." I had forgotten about that prenup, but it made sense now. Bonnie's father had always been wary of me. He'd been concerned that I would take advantage of his daughter's wealth. That prenup had been written to protect his assets, and it clearly stated that anyone caught cheating would only get a small portion of the community property. As the days passed, I kept replaying the details in my mind. The video that had surfaced, showing Bonnie and Rich together, was troubling. I wondered who had taken it and how it had been shared. The more I thought about it, the more questions I had. Susan insisted I show her the video, and as she watched, her anger grew. "I can't believe this," she said, frustration and hurt in her voice. "Why would they do this? They clearly think they can get away with it." We both agreed that we needed to be strategic in how we handled this, and we needed to be careful about what came next. It wasn't just about dealing with Bonnie and Rich. It was about protecting ourselves and our family. After a while, Susan fell silent. I thought she was processing everything, but then I heard her sob. It broke me to see her in pain, and I couldn't hold back my own tears. We both sat there, feeling the weight of what was happening, realizing that nothing would be the same again. I wasn't really drunk that evening, but I played it up a little. Holding a half-empty beer, I greeted Bonnie at the door with a loud hug and kiss. I half expected her to pull away, but instead she kissed me back passionately. As I pulled away, I tried to catch a hint of anything unusual on her, any sign that something was off, but there was nothing. She was just as alluring as ever, and honestly, I was in the mood. But the anger I felt earlier quickly erased that desire. I suddenly felt disgusted, and my earlier arousal faded fast. I couldn't go through with it. Instead, I grabbed a beer and said, "Dinner's ready," abruptly ending our moment. The next morning, I watched Bonnie get into Rich's car as they headed off to work together. I called Susan. "How'd it go last night?" "No problem," she said. "We joked through it to keep things light. I was really close to losing it when Rich made his move, but I held back. He probably wants to see Bonnie today anyway." She laughed bitterly. "He's so lazy about love, though. Doesn't want to risk anything uncomfortable. So no surprises there." By 10 a.m., Susan and I were at the office of one of her colleagues, Jake, a divorce attorney. Susan handled most of the trusts and wills at his firm, and Jake had known us both for years. He agreed to represent us. "You're sure you have solid proof?" Jake asked. We assured him that we did, but preferred not to show him yet. "No problem, as long as you've got the evidence," he replied, then shifted to the legal side. "I looked over your prenups, and they're pretty tough." "I can't believe you signed something like that, Rob. Did you get legal advice?" "My dad insisted on it," I replied. He had me consult a lawyer before I signed, and he made sure Susan had the same agreement before she married Rich. Jake was impressed. You could have really put yourselves at risk if either of you cheated. But here's the deal. Cheating means you get only 20% of the community property. That's savings, bank accounts, investments. Everything else is off limits. Wait, what if Bonnie has money she didn't tell me about after we got married? I asked. That's community property too, Jake explained. But anything she had before your marriage is hers alone. As for things you've upgraded, like your houses or appliances, they're tricky. The houses are protected, but things like solar panels could be considered community property depending on how the money for the improvements was handled. So she only gets 20% of everything, right? I asked. She can have that, but I'm not letting her take everything else. We can use that to our advantage, Jake said, smiling. You can make her move her stuff, pay for storage. That could be more trouble than it's worth, though. If she's smart, she might just let it go. Jake then reminded us to be careful with the video evidence we had. Keep it hidden, he warned. If it gets out, and they find out you were the one who shared it, they could sue you. If they filmed themselves and it got leaked, that's their problem. Susan and I exchanged looks. We talked about sharing the video with family and friends, but we weren't ready to deal with the fallout. We needed to know who filmed it first. The next step was setting the time to serve Bonnie and Rich with the divorce papers. I wanted to wait until Friday, let them stew all weekend without legal advice. But Jake, our attorney, advised against it. Dragging this out will just make it more expensive, he said. Instead, we chose Thursday at noon. He'd also be demanding full financial disclosures from both of them, something to keep them busy and stressed through the weekend. At first, Susan and I wanted to be there when they got served, just to see their faces. We even joked about inviting them to lunch as a setup. Jake quickly shut that down. Entertaining? Yes. Smart? Absolutely not. We eventually settled on serving them at work, right in front of their coworkers. After leaving Jake's office, Susan and I spent hours at the bank. We opened new personal accounts, transferred most of the money out of our joint ones, paid off credit cards, and closed anything tied to our spouses. There were no major debts to worry about, just small things. Jake had warned us to document every move to stay legally clean. Later that day, I checked my email and found more videos of Bonnie and Rich together. The footage came from the same location. I replied to the anonymous sender thanking them, but also expressing concern about the material going public. Privately, though, I wanted nothing more than for the world to see it. Still, I wasn't about to make a stupid mistake that could backfire legally. Soon after, I received an address, 9203 Victoria Street, apartment 201. When I visited the building, the receptionist wasn't interested in helping until I hinted that my brother-in-law might be involved in some shady business. She folded. In minutes, I had the lease information in hand. The apartment had been rented under the company Bonnie and Rich worked for, with Rich's signature all over it. Their secret hideout wasn't much of a secret anymore. I couldn't help but wonder how their employer would react when this came to light. When Thursday came, Bonnie's reaction was swift. 30 minutes after being served, she called me furious. "What is this, divorce? Are you serious?" she snapped. "I know about you and Rich," I said calmly. "I'm setting you free." Bonnie, still in denial, tried to flip the narrative. "You're unbelievable. There have been rumors, sure, but he's my brother-in-law. You're really buying this?" "I guess I am," I replied flatly. "You'll regret this. I'll take the kids, the house, the boat, the truck, everything. You'll be left with nothing but the bills," she ranted. I knew this reaction was coming. Susan and I had prepared for it. I stayed calm. "We'll see. I suggest you get an attorney." I paused. "Oh, and by the way, your things are being packed as we speak. Susan's handling Rich's. They'll be ready for pickup this afternoon. The locks have been changed and we've got restraining orders. You'll need to find somewhere else to stay until the court says otherwise." Her angry screaming trailed off as I hung up. 10 minutes later, Susan texted me. "Backyard, bring the cooler and fill it up." "That idiot Rich," she said, cracking open her beer. "He keeps denying everything. He claims we're just hearing rumors about him and Bonnie. He actually told me we've never even held hands in public. Can you believe that?" I nodded. "Bonnie said the same thing, but Rich is trying to cover up. He's acting like there's no problem, and he's making everything sound like a misunderstanding. I'm so mad right now," she continued. "If he were here, I'd kick his ass." She paused, shaking her head. "I told him to pick up his stuff, but only after calling first. I warned him I'd be answering the door with a tool. Jake's coming soon with 2 deputies, just in case things get heated. I wasn't thrilled about having deputies present, but Jake insisted. It's better to be safe than sorry, he said. If Rich does something dumb, you might end up in jail. Let the deputies keep things in check. Thanks for talking to the kids earlier, Susan said, her voice softening. I don't know how you managed it. I started crying just hearing you tell them. I couldn't have done it. We had told the kids together, explaining the situation as calmly as possible. I had expected to break down too, but somehow I stayed composed. The kids were surprisingly calm, though, Susan added. They seemed like they already knew. When you said, "Your mom and dad made mistakes and we can't ignore it," none of them seemed shocked. Do you think they figured it out already? I don't know, I replied. I didn't see it coming, but they seemed okay with it. At least on the surface. Just then, my phone pinged with a new message. I got an email. I wonder if it's from Pissed Off 999, I said. Check it, Susan urged. I handed her the phone, and after a few taps, she played the audio message. Can you believe Robert and Susan served us? Bonnie's voice crackled. They must have found out somehow. I can't believe this. Last night, Robert was all sweet, and now this. Rich's voice followed, calm. Relax. They don't know anything for sure. This is just some dumb rumor. We've never done anything wrong in public. If they go through with this divorce, they'll regret it. We'll make them pay. I let out a frustrated sigh. They really think they can get away with it, I said. That apartment Rich has been hiding for years. How long have they been planning this? We need to stay sharp. We have to protect ourselves just in case they're hiding something worse. Susan nodded, wiping her eyes. I can't stand the idea of Bonnie getting custody of Jason and Deidre or living in your house until Deidre's 18. That's just not fair. She buried her face in my shoulder. I'll fight for this. We're going to come out ahead somehow. The kids had been busy packing Bonnie's things when we returned home. Deidre and Cindy had already filled a few bags. Make sure to photograph everything, I reminded them, noting the bags would count against Bonnie's share of the community property. We checked in with the boys, who were almost done packing Rich's things. Rob, Rich's son, was throwing clothes into a duffel bag, looking more careless than usual. I couldn't help but smile. They had my back. I was glad the kids were focused and helping out, even if it meant doing some things I wouldn't have done myself. On our way home, Bonnie's text came in. I called Jake immediately. Within minutes, he showed up, along with 2 deputies. As we waited, Bonnie and Rich pulled up. Behind them was someone I wasn't expecting, Boudreaux Landry, a loud, arrogant bully from school. He was the last person I wanted to deal with, but here he was, grinning. Hey, Robert, he called, his voice grating. Got a little problem with your wife and brother-in-law being friendly, huh? I forced a smile. How's your family doing, Boudreaux? Doing good, he replied. Then his expression hardened. You really think Rich is messing with your wife? You sure about that? I nodded. It's exactly what's happening. He smirked. Well, that's a shame. But we both know you can't prove anything, right? All rumors? I just walked away. I didn't have time for his games. Bonnie stormed up. You took almost everything out of our account, she shouted. Yep, I said. And I've got the statements to show exactly what was there. When we split things, you'll get what's fair. But don't expect anything more. She glared at me, but I didn't let her intimidate me. Susan and I didn't follow Bonnie or Rich inside when they went to retrieve their belongings. Instead, Deidre and Cindy went in with one of the deputies to keep an eye on things. I had told the kids to watch for anything unusual, though I didn't specify what unusual meant. I trusted they'd know it when they saw it. Jason and Rob followed Rich around as he checked his house. Bonnie immediately demanded, "Where's my jewelry?" I had anticipated this. Over the years, I'd bought her several high-value pieces during our trips, jewels worth over $25,000. Bonnie wasn't happy when she learned most of her collection was safely locked away in my safe. Boudreaux tried to weigh in, but I snapped a photo of the jewelry she was wearing. I've had all the pieces itemized for insurance, I said. These are community property, just like the boat and truck Bonnie wanted earlier. I wanted to ensure they didn't just vanish. Boudreaux studied me, probably surprised I wasn't as clueless as he thought. Jake, who had been quietly observing, stepped in to keep things professional, suggesting Bonnie give up the ring and necklace for a new valuation. After a brief discussion with Boudreaux, Bonnie reluctantly handed over the jewels. "Where do you expect me to go?" she asked, irritation clear in her voice. I almost snapped a sarcastic reply about her new apartment, but held back. I realized how much my feelings for her had changed. A few days ago, I was still deeply in love. Now, I barely cared. I was furious, but there was a coldness where there had once been warmth. Bonnie and Rich left in their cars, with Boudreaux following shortly after. I couldn't help but wonder if they were headed to the apartment. Jake reassured me, "I've got someone on them. If we expose that apartment, it could help us in the negotiations." Unfortunately, they had already thought of that and went to a Holiday Inn instead, with Boudreaux carrying their stuff inside. I was preparing to buy more thumb drives for all the audio and video files I was receiving. As Susan and the girls were making dinner, my phone pinged with another email. Susan followed me into the den to see what was going on. The audio file was from Boudreaux again. "Robert might have someone following you guys. That's why I told you to stay at a motel. You've got to make it look like you slept separately to throw off anyone checking." Rich grumbled. "This is getting old. My credit card was denied when we checked in. It's embarrassing. I'm calling the bank to get a new one." Boudreaux continued. "Make sure you write down any assets you have. If you've got secret money, protect it. Your spouses can't take what they don't know about. Be careful. If you try hiding things, it could lead to charges of perjury." Rich angrily responded, "I'll be damned if Susan gets any more of my money. Let's get to the Cayman Islands tonight. Open an account and move the money. We'll clean up our tracks here, mess up the beds, and make it look like we spent the night." The message ended, and Susan gasped in shock. "They've got secret accounts? But how? Where did they even get the money? I've seen their bank statements. We don't make that much to hide anything big." I was uneasy, but I tried to focus on the practical steps ahead. Bonnie and I each had a small weekly cash allowance, just enough for incidental purchases. Most expenses went on credit cards, and we always checked the statements for any unusual charges. I told the apartment manager Rich might be involved in pills and running a brothel. I was just messing with her, though. You don't think he's doing anything like that, right? "Rich? Mr. Straight-laced?" Susan laughed. "He wouldn't know where to begin, but then again, I never thought he'd cheat on me either." We decided to put the matter aside for the night, knowing there was nothing we could do about hidden accounts for now. We joined the kids for dinner. The next morning, I headed to Jake's office. I'd arranged for the jewelry to be appraised. And while I was there, I had my firearms appraised too. It didn't cost much beyond a new Glock, which I had been meaning to buy. At least now Bonnie couldn't argue with me about it. Susan had gone to catch up on work, so we met at Jake's office. I played him the audio files from the day before. "I'd really like to know who's sending you these," Jake said. "How they got those recordings is beyond me. A private investigator couldn't move that fast. As for the bank accounts, we might need a judge's order to look into them. But it could take time." He paused. "You're sure you haven't noticed any missing money?" We both shook our heads. It doesn't make sense for them to be hiding much. But if they've been putting away small amounts for years, that could add up. Jake continued. "I've started the divorce process as quickly as we can. In this state, it takes 6 months to finalize, but we can get a court date much sooner. Next week, we'll meet with Bonnie and Rich and their lawyer to go over assets. Then we'll see the judge. In cases of adultery, it's pretty straightforward. I'll argue that counseling is pointless, and once the judge rules, it's just a waiting game." Jake added, "Oh, Boudreaux Landry called me today about the money you took out. He demanded the extra 30%. I told him about the prenup, and he wasn't happy. He wanted proof of the adultery, but I told him it'd be handled in court. It's kind of amusing watching him squirm. He's a joke in the legal world. If I can, I might slip that audio of him advising to hide money offshore into the courtroom. It wouldn't disbar him, but it would embarrass him. I hated that I had to work the weekend, but my head nurse couldn't cover my shifts. What if I started coughing and I had to be tested for COVID?" I joked. "Could you cover for me then?" "Nice try," Sharon said, laughing. "But yeah, I could cover for you. It's a busy weekend, but I understand. If I found out my husband was cheating, I'd be a wreck. You've got plenty of vacation and sick time. This qualifies for emergency leave. Just take care of yourself, and we'll start your vacation after that." "Actually, how about I work this weekend and you start my leave on Monday?" I offered. "Really? Thanks so much. You're a lifesaver. I'll start your leave with sick time and then switch to vacation. Take as long as you need and keep me posted." Work was a welcome distraction. Weekends were always hectic in the ICU, with fewer procedures, but a constant need for vigilance. I was back at the nurse's station when I saw my father-in-law, Dr. Préjean, waiting for me. "What brings you to the ICU, Dr. Préjean?" I asked, trying to keep it casual. He wasn't in the mood for pleasantries. "Cut the crap. Let's talk," he hissed. Once we were in the head nurse's office, he asked, "What's this about you kicking Bonnie out? I heard she was crying to her mom last night." I didn't sugarcoat anything. "Bonnie's having an affair, and it's with my sister's husband. I'm dealing with a family crisis," I replied, hoping to get through to him. John was taken aback. "She told us it was just office gossip, that they ride to work together, but it's nothing," he said. I opened up, knowing it might earn me some respect. "I've got proof. Audio and video, clear evidence. I never would have acted on a rumor, but this, I can't ignore it." John's face softened. "What are you going to do?" he asked. "What can I do?" I replied. "I'm trying to protect the kids, but I can't sit back and let this slide." "What would you do if Bonnie had proof I was cheating?" John was blunt. "I'd want your head on a platter. I'd help her bury you." He paused, clearly upset. "How are Jason and Deidre handling this?" "We've talked, but they're not as distraught as you might think. They've got their cousins to lean on. They seem to be taking it in stride, almost like they expected it. They'll need help later, but I don't think they're ready to talk to you yet." "I'm sorry, Robert," he said quietly. "I didn't know, but I'll protect the kids first. After that, I'll support Bonnie in terms of her needs. I'm not condoning her actions, but I'll back you if you have proof." I appreciated his honesty, and he left the office, visibly shaken. That evening, Susan and I had to tell our parents. It wasn't easy. My dad asked if I had proof, and I confirmed that I did. He was more concerned with the kids' well-being than with our feelings. He agreed to support us, but in our culture, kids always came first. By Wednesday, we were gathering our assets. A financial arbitrator was appointed to review everything. I'd provided details of my income, along with a pay stub from Bonnie. Turns out, her monthly salary was around $5,000, which was close to mine. Jake said this would help eliminate alimony, even without the prenup or proof of infidelity. Susan struggled to get the tax documents, as Rich hadn't filed them properly. She was relieved when Jake confirmed she'd likely get a substantial monthly maintenance payment. Then, Boudreaux, Rich, and Bonnie arrived for the asset meeting. Bonnie's glare shocked me. She was angry, but not at all apologetic. It was clear she hadn't expected this confrontation. Rich, on the other hand, looked uncomfortable but tried to remain neutral. The court official introduced himself and his assistant, who would be recording everything. "We'll start by having you sign affidavits stating your testimony is truthful, and anything you say will be entered into evidence. The goal today is to list your assets and income. The judge will review them and decide on property division. We won't discuss prenuptial agreements today, but I understand it's a factor." They began with vehicles, firearms, and household items, which took only minutes. Bonnie's jewelry was appraised, revealing it was worth more than my truck and tools combined. Boudreaux insisted that the solar system be treated separately, which Jake noted. The 401k accounts were considered since we had been married over 10 years, despite my assumption they were excluded. When the money itself was reviewed, I entered the statements reflecting my taking 80% of the funds. Then, the same was done for Susan and Rich. Mr. Jacobs, the auditor, then raised a concern. "There's a big discrepancy between Mrs. Fontenot's reported income and what's on the tax filings from the last 2 years. He pointed out that Bonnie had reported $140,000 annually, while I had estimated her income to be $60,000 based on pay stubs. My shock was clear as I exhaled. "What the hell?" I explained that Bonnie and Rich had insisted on a new accountant, one of their clients, and that I hadn't paid much attention to the returns. Bonnie's face turned red as Jacobs continued, explaining that Bonnie's bonuses of $80,000 each year accounted for the extra income. Meanwhile, Rich's bonuses were around $110,000 each year, and he'd netted around $80,000 annually. "So where's the money, Bonnie?" I asked angrily. "That explains why you both went to the Cayman Islands last Friday. You were hiding it." Bonnie froze before blurting out, "How did you know? Are you following me?" "No need to follow you," I replied. "You did it yourself." I explained how we used a phone locator app to track the kids' whereabouts. When they couldn't reach Bonnie, they checked and found her off the grid most of the day. Using flight info, we deduced she and Rich had gone to the Caymans. On Monday, the kids found they were in Baton Rouge, likely moving the money. Jake stepped in. "Boudreaux, we can get the statements for those accounts, and it's illegal for an attorney to advise his clients to hide assets offshore. This is a felony." Bonnie started crying, and Rich grew visibly worried. Boudreaux, flustered, denied any wrongdoing, but his face said it all. Susan asked, Can we force them to return the money? Jake confirmed we'd get our share, even if it meant garnishing their wages. You'll get 80% of the funds once we prove infidelity in court. Bonnie's outburst surprised us all. There's no money left! It's gone! Rich tried to quiet her, but she accused me loudly. You stole it! I calmly responded, I didn't know about the money until recently. How are you going to claim you spent it or gambled it away? Bonnie insisted they tried to transfer the money in the Caymans, but the transfer was rejected. They had gone to Baton Rouge to investigate. She claimed the money had been transferred a week ago, but there was no record of where it went. Jacobs offered to investigate the Baton Rouge account, saying he could get results quickly and would enter the findings into court records. When Bonnie and Rich left the room, Susan and I were left with lingering questions. Where did the money go? She asked, clearly frustrated. I shrugged, unsure but thinking. One more mystery. Somehow, Jake and Boudreaux fast-tracked our case. I suspected Bonnie and Rich pressured Boudreaux to get us before the judge quickly. After a week at the Holiday Inn, they moved into an apartment. I imagined their struggle with finances and laughed at the thought of their secret love nest. The few $1,000s they had wasn't going to last, especially with Boudreaux's hefty retainer. All 5 kids insisted on attending the hearing, and I agreed. They were directly impacted by the divorce. Jake briefed us on the process. Judge Guidry preferred a semi-formal approach and would sit near us at a table, not behind the bench. We were to sit in a triangle with the kids at the tip of the diamond-shaped gallery. When the judge entered, we all stood, following Jake's lead. He asked for respect and warned that disrespect would get us kicked out. After reviewing both cases, Judge Guidry addressed the adultery accusation. He explained that while adultery doesn't affect divorce in Louisiana, prenuptial agreements did. He then discussed discrepancies in cash assets and alleged attempts to hide funds. The investigation revealed that Bonnie and Rich had $120,000 and $160,000 in Baton Rouge accounts, but the money had been transferred a week before the divorce was filed. The transfer was legal, and the money had been distributed to 5 accounts belonging to their children. I was stunned. Bonnie had hidden the money in plain sight. The judge, with a slight smile, acknowledged their decision to give the money to their kids, but pointed out that these actions couldn't be reversed without proof of fraud. No one could prove fraud, so the money remained with the children. I was relieved to see Bonnie and Rich's glares, knowing they'd lost their hidden funds. We all shook our heads in agreement when asked if we had proof of fraud. The next issue was child custody. Deidre raised her hand and stated she wanted to live with me because her mother had cheated. Jason and the others agreed, while the younger kids chose to stay with their mother for the same reason. Judge Guidry took note but reminded Deidre that the legal process hadn't established cheating yet. She then pointed out that she could petition for emancipation at 16 and that her college fund, now boosted by $56,000, could support her. Her siblings echoed her sentiment, stating they could live independently with their funds. Judge Guidry, trying to suppress a smile, addressed the kids' desire for emancipation. He warned them to sit down, acknowledging their wishes would be considered. Finally, Jake presented evidence of Bonnie and Rich's adultery, explicit photos of them together. Boudreaux immediately objected, claiming photos could easily be altered, offering a flimsy defense. But the evidence was clear, and Jake stood firm. Judge Guidry looked at Jake, then at Susan and me. Jake nodded, signaling me to respond. Your Honor, I'm not sure where the evidence came from. I received a series of videos and audio files from an anonymous source. The photos I provided were screenshots from one of the videos. I didn't want to show the video unless necessary, but I do have a DVD and flash drive containing the full video of my wife and brother-in-law together. I glanced at Bonnie and Rich, both looking shocked, visibly pale and shaking their heads in disbelief. However, Your Honor, if you wish to play the video in court, I'd ask that the kids be excused. They don't need to witness this. Deidre spoke up. Not a problem, Dad. It's just closeness. We've already seen it. The ones you have aren't nearly as bad as some of the others. Cindy added, Yeah, like the one where Dad has Aunt Bonnie bent over the couch doing her, like an owl. Hoo. All 5 kids burst into laughter. I was frozen for a moment, trying to process the situation. It clicked, and I realized everything. The oddity of it all was settling but disturbing. I glanced back at my father, who gave me a slight nod. Judge Guidry watched Bonnie and Rich's reactions. They both looked horrified, their faces turning red. All right, Mr. Fontenot, do you Want us to play this video, or do the parties agree that infidelity occurred? I could see Boudreaux's interest, his eyes darting around and licking his lips. But both Bonnie and Rich quickly begged the judge to avoid playing the video, prompting him to retract. Boudreaux asked for a moment with his clients. After a brief exchange, he reluctantly conceded, "I guess we'll accept the plaintiff's claims." Judge Guidry nodded and began his verdict. "For the record, regarding community property, since all parties agree adultery occurred, I will enforce the prenuptial agreement. As expected, Mr. Fontenot and Miss Jenkins are awarded 80% of the property. Susan and I were granted our share, and the judge suggested working out the specific distribution with our lawyers. The custody arrangements are clear. Mr. Fontenot will have full custody of Jason and Deidre Fontenot. Mrs. Jenkins will have custody of Cynthia, Robert, and David Jenkins. Both non-custodial parents will retain full visitation rights. This divorce will be finalized in 6 months. Bonnie and Rich's inflated incomes had led to maintenance payments. Bonnie would pay me $1,000 per month, while Rich would pay Susan $2,000 monthly for the next 3 years. Each child would receive $500 per month until age 18. Jake believed these were minimal payments, but I was less concerned. Susan questioned my decision to accept the verdict, but I felt it was the best course. Once the hearing was over, Jake arranged for our meeting to finalize the property division. I instructed the kids to head home and wait for me. I wanted a family meeting. As Susan and I walked to the back of the courtroom, my father was waiting. "So when did you figure it out, Dad?" I asked. Susan was confused. "I realized a couple of days ago when I looked over an old credit card bill," Dad replied. "A couple of months ago, Jason and Rob asked to use my card, claiming they needed it for an anniversary gift. They said they'd pay me back. When I got my statement, I saw a purchase from an electronics store, and it raised some flags. I called the store to inquire, and after some persistence, I found out they bought spy devices for $500. "For spy gear?" I asked, astonished. Dad continued, "I followed you home, trying to piece things together, and I wanted to hear the rest." At home, the kids were waiting. I suggested we sit around the kitchen table. Susan grabbed beers for Dad and me, and Jason and Rob held out their hands. "You're not old enough to drink," I said, lightly. They shrugged, unbothered. "All right, let's start. Who wants to go first?" Deidre began. "It started when Cindy and I visited Mom's office. She wasn't there, nor was Uncle Rich. We wanted some cash, but the secretary said they'd been gone for a while. After checking our phones, we saw them at an address that led us to an apartment. We saw Uncle Rich's car, and that's when we started watching them. They went there 3 times over a few days. Each time, they stayed about an hour and a half. We told the boys about it." Rob spoke up first. "We found these little bugs online that can be placed in cell phones. Once you download the app, it operates like a phone call running in the background. It doesn't interfere with regular calls, but it does drain the battery faster. It picks up sounds around the phone if someone wants to listen in. We talked Pawpaw into letting us use his credit card to buy them. Sorry about that, Pawpaw." He paused. "Getting the bugs on the phones was easy. Then we took turns listening in on their conversations and recorded anything that seemed important to share. That explains the audio recordings. But how did you get video footage and know which apartment they were using?" I asked. Deidre replied, "We checked their keys. Both of them had a key labeled 201, and that wasn't their office number. So Jason copied Mom's key, and we went to the apartment a few times to snoop. That's when we decided to get cameras." Dave chimed in. "We got some cameras and a small transmitter. It was pretty cool." He seemed excited about the tech, but failed to recognize that what they were doing was leading to the breakup of 2 marriages. At least Susan and I were finally getting some answers. The cameras were motion sensitive, so they didn't use up too much battery. We taped the receiver under the couch to collect the footage, and it sent the info to our receiver. We just recorded it all. "Okay, so you recorded Bonnie and Rich and sent me the audio and video," I said carefully. I wasn't angry at my kids, but I couldn't ignore how bizarre it all was. "But there's also the issue of the money." Deidre spoke again. "Dad, the first time Cindy and I checked the apartment, we knew Mom was done with us. Not gone, but she wasn't coming back to how our family was. They had clothes there, mainly underwear, and I recognized some of Mom's outfits. There were towels, makeup, everything. We knew exactly what was going on. They were having cleaning up, and then coming home to you and Aunt Sue like nothing happened. We were all furious." They weren't just cheating on you two, they were cheating on all of us. Cindy added, the money thing was a side issue, but when we were snooping around, we found papers for a bank account with instructions on how to access it online. It took a while, but we found the actual accounts. We even went through Dad's and Aunt Bonnie's offices while we were waiting for them. The secretary let us in a couple of times. We found the bank info in Dad's desk, and in Aunt Bonnie's office, we found more papers. She had a notebook in her purse with passwords. It didn't say secret bank account, but we figured it out. The passwords were complex, definitely not password 1. It worked. We realized they used the same password for both accounts. Jason took over. We knew about them messing around, but when we found the hidden bank accounts, we got really mad. We thought they might be dealing pills or something shady. Dave came up with the idea to put the money in our accounts. Dave blushed a little. I thought, we can't let Dad and Aunt Bonnie just get rich off this and leave us with nothing. We knew about divorce splits, and we didn't want them keeping half of that money. We already had accounts set up by Pawpaw, so we figured we should take the money. We knew it was risky, but since we're minors and it's our parents' money, we thought we wouldn't get in too much trouble. The others agreed. If we had known about the 80-20 split, we probably wouldn't have taken the money, Deidre admitted. But it worked out better this way, I said. Then you started sending me videos and audio files? Jason nodded. That was the hardest part. We were so angry at Mom and Uncle Rich for what they were doing to all of us. We didn't want to hurt you and Aunt Sue, but we couldn't just sit back. So we sent you that first video. We kept an eye on you and knew you were getting upset because we kept stalling on visiting Pawpaw and Meemaw. If you'd gone for a gun, we were going to tell you everything. We knew you would tell Aunt Sue. That's when it clicked, and we decided to move the money Mom had hidden. I guess we stole it. Well, I know we stole it, but we all agreed they screwed us over, so it felt fair. I hope you and Aunt Sue aren't too mad. I looked at Susan, who was clearly stunned by everything. With a grin, I said, I just hope none of you kids ever get mad at me and Sue. But if you pull a stunt like you did with your mother and Rich, I swear I'll beat you to death, though it'll probably be with my walker when I'm in the old folks' home. They all chuckled at my light-hearted threat. Deidre smiled and replied, You'd never have to worry about that, Daddy. You'd never screw the family over. Us Cajuns always stick together. Here's something I don't get, my dad interrupted. You bought those bugs for the phones using my credit card, and those were expensive. Where'd you get the money for the video cameras? Jason answered, Oh, those cameras were about $500 each because they could record full video with sound and had motion and sound sensors. We got 5 of them. Then another $500 each for the transmitters that sent the signal to the receiver we hooked up to Deidre's computer. That's $3,500 plus shipping. But we can get half back when we return them undamaged. We've already pulled the cameras and transmitters, but we probably lost the bugs. As for the credit card, we used Dad's Visa. I didn't have a Visa, so I was confused. Jason added, You do now. I applied for one and forged your signature. It has a $10,000 limit. We bring in the mail every day, so it was easy to hide it, Deidre added. Cindy and I set up the pissed-off 999 email account. Rob came up with the name since he said what Mom and Uncle Rich did really pissed him off. The kids all smiled proudly, seeing Susan, Dad, and me impressed. So the bugs are still active? I asked. Dave nodded. They'll keep working as long as the cell phone batteries do. Between that and the phone locator app, we know where they are and what they're doing all the time, Dave added enthusiastically. Anytime either of them talks near their phones, we can hear it. The system's voice activated, so we've got a lot of random car sounds and business chatter. We took turns going through the files, picking out anything important. I asked to access the audio feed. Susan and I got advance knowledge of Bonnie and Rich's demands at the property settlement meeting. Bonnie was so desperate for her jewelry that she gave up most of her cash and all of the household items. We granted a few of their requests without much resistance, but they definitely had to grovel for the rest. Susan stunned everyone, including me, when she suggested Bonnie and Rich walk across town with signs that read, We cheated on our spouses. She proposed Bonnie wear only a G-string and pasties and Rich a jockstrap while they did it. The alternative, she said, would be for us to appeal the alimony and child support decisions. Boudreaux's face nearly turned purple at the suggestion. I couldn't help but notice he seemed a little too interested in the idea of Bonnie without clothes. We'd overheard him telling Bonnie and Rich that they got off easy with the support payments and warned them that we might appeal. Susan eventually backed down, but only after getting Bonnie and Rich to apologize on their knees. Epilogue. I'm not entirely sure how it happened, but I'll swear on a stack of Bibles that I had no part in it. 2 months after our court hearing, the insurance company Bonnie and Rich worked for found out that Rich had been using company funds to rent a love nest. While everyone else got bonuses over the past 2 years, Bonnie's bonuses were unusually high, and Rich's were large as well. The company didn't want to attract any unwanted attention, so they quietly dismissed them both. None of the videos made it onto the internet, despite our joking about making Bonnie and Rich porn stars. We didn't care, but the kids didn't want to be embarrassed. I understood their point. Bonnie and Rich are now in New Orleans, working for a small shipping company. After leaving town, they rarely see the kids or even call. Last I heard, they were struggling to make their alimony and child support payments. I wish them well, or maybe not. The end, one of my favorite authors, Vandemonium, always tells a joke after his stories, so I thought I'd include one. Thibodeau sat on his porch when he saw his cousin Boudreau pull up in his truck. Thibodeau was stunned when 5 penguins jumped out of the truck. "Boudreau, what are you doing with those penguins?" he asked. "They followed me home," Boudreau said. "Ain't they cute?" "Take them to the zoo tomorrow," Thibodeau ordered. His cousin nodded. 2 days later, Thibodeau walked out of the liquor store with a case of beer. He saw Boudreau walking down the street with a large umbrella and a bag, the 5 penguins trailing behind. "Boudreau, didn't I tell you to take those penguins to the zoo?" "I did," Boudreau replied. "We had such a good time, we're going to the beach today."